I am Pikiss-Chris,
And I'm Bastard Swordsman.
and welcome to another episode of Scenes from a Podcast, a podcast about movies. Ah, lovely.
Movies.
Yes.
I love movies.
Movies are like moving pictures, you know?
Yeah, once upon a time, people even used to refer to them as pictures more than they did as movies.
Yeah.
Movies, they can be pretty good sometimes, I think.
My favorite movie is Attack of the Clones. It's not a good movie.
Oh, but why is it your favorite then?
Because it's funny.
Oh, that's a good enough reason. My favorite movie is End of Evangelion. It's not, well, it is kind of funny, actually.
That actually is moving pictures because it's animated.
Yeah. Oh, well, actually, live action movies are also 24 pictures every second.
That day.
So, you saw a pretty good movie recently, right?
Yes, I did. Yeah. Puss in Boots. More like Pussy in Boots, am I right, fellas?
Wow. You should pursue a stand-up career.
I know. What's the deal with Antonio Banderas?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's like old.
Anyways, it was a good movie. Won't spoil it, but suffice to say it was it had a lot more to offer than the first one, so
I would assume so. I didn't watch the first one, but yeah, just like Siskel and Ebert would say, it gets 2 thumbs up from this podcast.
Yep. If we had a third person, it would get 3 thumbs up, but unfortunately, we cannot self-duplicate.
Yeah. So I've just been pretty much reading more of A Certain Magical Index. Pretty good. I'm almost done with New Testament, which is the second series of books, and I think the first half of New Testament is a lot better than the second half. But yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway. Anything else interesting?
Not really. No. I've been planning on making a video essay. But you know, I've also got like other writing projects, and you know, I don't really want to put them on hold, so it's like trying to find the time to do all that. I think I might need to like take a week off at least to get it started, so
Hopefully you get paid overtime, or not overtime, paid time off.
yeah. I got that. Don't you worry. They're reasonable slave drivers.
Well, that's good. Oh yeah, I did recently see a few movies in theaters. I saw the new movie Infinity Pool, directed by Brandon Cronenberg, who is the son of David Cronenberg, who made such classics as Videodrome, Scanners, The Fly, Dead Ringers. And Infinity Pool was decent, I think.
I haven't seen I'm literally just hearing about this film for the first time right now. That's the state of film advertising. Yeah.
I mean, I saw a good amount of ads for it, but Yeah.
I mean, in terms of like 2022, 2023 horror films, the only things I saw were Megan. Advertising wise, at least, I didn't actually see it in theaters, but
I don't really have any plans on seeing Megan ever. Um, yeah, and I also, um, so anyone who's not from Rochester, New York, might not know, but there's a theater called the Little Theater, and it plays a lot of interesting movies, and sometimes it shows old movies sometimes. Well, I guess some other theaters do that too around here, but they do that a lot more often here. They played a movie called Knife Plus Heart, which was, um, I don't know if you know what a giallo is, but giallos are basically Italian murder mysteries, which were made during the 60s and 70s mostly, and they're basically seen as the precursor to the slasher genre. Um, and there's a lot of tropes associated with giallos, like, of course, there are like a lot of kills, and the killer uses like bladed objects, so that's where the slasher comes into play, and there are a lot of POV shots from the killer's point of view, and the they wear black gloves a lot of the time, and yeah, and they're very stylistic.
yeah. Just looking at the poster of her, I'm not sure how well it represents the movie, but I can definitely see it's going for a certain kind of ethereal vibe, I guess. Uh, Reading the Wikipedia page right now. The lead character is loosely based on Anne Marie Tenzi, a female producer specialized in gay pornography who was active in France in the 1970s and 1980s.
Uh, Um, yeah, this film was French, and it's from 2018, so it's more of an homage to Giallo. And yeah, there's a lot of gay sex in it, but
My kind of
um,
movie.
yeah, I knew that. Um, yeah, it was okay. It was decent, I think. Infinity Pool was also decent, and I saw both of those movies on the same day.
Same day.
Yeah.
Gotta up my game here. So, I believe last time you were the one to recommend the movie, so I'll let you introduce it.
Yes. Last time I recommended a movie called Barry Lyndon, directed by Stanley Kubrick, or as the Brits would pronounce it, and as my friend Chris would pronounce it, Kubrick. But I guess that fits because it's a British film. So Barry Lyndon is about this guy called Redmond Barry, who's from Ireland, and the story's set during the kind of late 1700s. And basically, he's this doofus who has no riz, he has no drip, but he using a combination of arguably his wit, but also kind of just dumb luck. He rises to the top of the British social classes, basically. Uh, yeah, that's probably a crappy way of describing it, but it's a really good film, I think. What did you think of Barry Lyndon?
I liked it. I think the thing the biggest strength going for it as a film is just how much it engrosses itself in the historical setting it takes place in, and how much that sort of informs the characters and the themes and whatnot. Because a lot of movies that are like, sorry, I don't know what that noise was. A lot of films that like take place in a historical setting sort of gentrify it, for lack of a better word. They sort of like to portray it as the characters all have the same values that we as modern audiences do, and they don't do that with this movie. Several times, the main character who's Irish is sort of treated as like a lesser life form because he's Irish, and he's trying to fuck his cousin and nobody bats an eye at it, and it's
I mean,
yeah.
the Brits still treat the Irish like that today, and the Brits also, ironically, fuck their cousins a lot,
That is
allegedly.
well, allegedly, but yeah, you know, if anyone would be able to commentate on that kind of culture, it would be Kubrick. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it definitely should feel authentic because a large part of the film is sort of commenting on the old, like, sort of myth of high society in old Britain and ideas of chivalry and what it means to be a gentleman and how the whole sort of system is like kind of a crock of shit and it's like very like exclusionary and basically about clout. So I guess that is kind of like today.
yeah, I mean, it takes like a different form, but it's basically the same idea, the same sort of stratified hierarchy. One of the things I found interesting is that it actually commentates on how repressive being in that hierarchy actually is, not just for the lower class but also the higher class. The sort of the stiff upper lip that they all have is, it's just a facade. It's just something that they wear in order to make themselves appear more groomed and refined or whatever. But it's like there are scenes in the movie, early on in the movie, I don't think I'm spoiling anything, where it's like he challenges a guy to a duel for like his cousin's affection, and like despite this guy relatively speaking being of a higher social status than him, he's the one who's like pissing his pants terrified at the idea of being in like a gun duel, and that sort of idea sort of repeats itself. I'm not gonna spoilers, but it sort of bookends the film also in kind of a way too. So
I always forget to say this, but spoilers for Barry Lyndon.
yeah,
Um, yeah, it's like duels are seen as this sort of like, oh, you disgraced my honor, so I will regain it through a duel. But in the actual duels, it's like everyone like acts like that until they're facing down the barrel of a gun. Like,
yeah,
yeah, like in also in the final duel, like the person actually wielding the gun is like fine, but then like when it's the other person's time to shoot, like they're pissing their pants, basically.
yeah, exactly. Another thing of note, again, spoilers, is that like when that motif of the duel appears at the end again, it's like he's fighting his stepson, and they're fighting over like really petty like social status reasons. Like he's angry at this guy partially because he's Irish and he doesn't like the idea that his father, even a stepfather, is someone from a lesser race, quote unquote.
I don't
And
think that was really why.
I mean, that was partially the reason. I mean, there were other reasons he didn't like him, but like that also played a role, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just brought that up because that was like important to the point I was making. So
Yeah, this is a very long movie. It's an epic, if you will, and a lot of this is also not the first epic from Stanley Kubrick. He also made a movie in 1960 called Spartacus, which is like even longer than this, and like you know, in the 50s and 60s, Hollywood was really into the idea of the epic and making these extremely long and like also lavish, like sort of larger than life movies with intricate sets and stuff. And they cost millions and millions of dollars to make, and companies nearly bankrupted themselves. Um, but like something that's just in all epics is like, a protagonist who is sort of like a legend in their own right. Like, um, Spartacus, you know, the main character is this legendary figure who like led a slave revolt against the Roman Empire, and he sacrificed himself for his ideas. He was a very noble man. And then there's Cleopatra, who's a very like big figure in Egypt, and she seduced Julius Caesar, all that stuff. Um, Lawrence of Arabia, but the main character in Barry Lyndon isn't really this big, larger than life figure. And he's kind of like undeserving of being the protagonist of an epic.
yeah, like you said, he sort of stumbles his way into it by chance. Uh, he runs off from home because he thinks it's because he killed someone in a duel. Really, it's because they just wanted him to fuck off so he'd stop getting in the way of the arranged marriage. And
Yeah, he doesn't like have a lot of agency. And even when he thinks he's making decisions for himself, they don't really end up doing anything. Like, it's all just a part of some elaborate ploy someone else decided for him. Um, like, and very early on in the film, one of the first scenes, his cousin is trying to flirt with him, and like she takes her ribbon off and hides it in her cleavage, and she's like, find the ribbon, and he's like, I can't. And he's like a total pussy, and it shows like he's weak-willed, he has no game. Whereas like normally, like, you think this sort of dashing rogue figure would like know exactly what to say, and have women like throwing themselves at him, but like he completely blows it with his cousin, which is kind of funny. Like, him not being able to fuck his cousin is like seen as a character flaw of his in the film.
yeah, I mean, it's so fucking like strange. He like gets mad at her. I'm talking as if this isn't incest, but he gets mad at her for like rebuffing him despite the fact that he showed that he's not strong enough, I guess, to like to go for it, you know?
Yeah.
And then after
Yeah,
that he spends like most of the first act of the film being dicked around from like army to army, faction to faction, you know, before he lands with like another guy who sort of comes up with like this card shark scam for him to like ride the coattails of.
there's another scene kind of early on where he joins like the British army and he gets into a fight with that one guy and like he starts insulting him, but all the insults are like just told to him by another guy, so he can't even like come up with his own insults for him.
Why did that guy help him anyway?
Probably just hated the other guy.
Well, I can relate to that.
Yeah. And Redmond Barry does have some positive traits, like when he's with the Prussian army, he does like save this guy's life, and so he demonstrates bravery. So like he's not like he's like a very human character. He's not like a very noble guy, but like he has like positive and negative traits. He feels like an actual person.
Yeah, it would have been one thing if I think we were talking about this with Hanabi, like morally complex characters whose flaws are forefront are a lot harder to write than just complete
Bad people.
bastards.
Yeah.
Yeah, with no redeeming qualities. Generally, you get like it feels more like a character study than like a morality play.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. Um. The structure of the film is kind of interesting because the first half of the film sort of feels like this grand adventure, but then the second half is literally just the main character just sitting on his ass, like because he marries a rich woman and then he just like basically squanders his wealth, basically doing nothing, achieving nothing.
Yeah. He again is his mom's the one who sort of suggests to him a plan for like maintaining that wealth and
And he doesn't do
yeah
anything.
and even then the plan is just mooch off other people also, just ingratiate yourself with these guys, and he can't even fucking do that because he gets into a fist fight with his stepson in the middle of a piano performance.
Mhm. Yeah, that's one of the big flaws of old British society. Like, definitely, like, there's a lot of focus on connections with people. I mean, there is in today's society as well, and not just in Britain. But like a lot of a person's value comes from what other people in high society think of you, not just your own value and what you bring to the table yourself.
I will say it's very funny to me that like if Barry Lyndon was like a guy today and he did something like that, he'd probably still have social connections because like fucking Ezra Miller did all of that shit and he's still the Flash now somehow for a film that nobody wants to see.
Yeah, it was a really interesting choice to have um, Redmond Barry kidnap all those kids um, towards the end of the film.
Is that something he actually did? I knew that he like assaulted people.
Oh, he like kidnapped people and threatened people with a gun.
Really? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh. Jesus.
he should be in jail. But yeah, getting a bit off topic.
Oh my god. What else is there to say? I like the narration. I think it's very dignified, but also like tongue in cheek just enough where it's like it's kind of winking to the audience about how about this guy and how he's not really as deserving to be the hero of his own story he as he somehow ended up being, but it's like it's not like, going, hey, hey, you get it? It's
Yeah. Well, I think the narrator refers to the story as a tragedy at one point, but it's not like a typical tragedy that ends in like a bunch of deaths and all that. It's more just like a tragedy of a man accomplishing nothing, really. And also that sort of informs the tone of the narration, like, because, like, why should this man who achieved nothing, like, have a narrator, like, constantly sucking his dick or whatever?
yeah. It's more of a tragedy in the well, I guess not. I was gonna make a point and then I realized it was fucking stupid.
Uh, I do that sometimes too.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I'll make it anyway just because like it's sort of like a tragedy in like the Greek sense where it's not like about like, oh, this happened to people who didn't deserve this. It's, oh, it's what a waste that nothing nothing was even accomplished.
I mean, there are classic Greek tragedies that are more similar to like what Shakespeare would end up writing, but yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. One interesting thing about how the film was shot, Kubrick used cameras that were originally supposed to, or that were, okay, no. He used cameras that were made by NASA to shoot this.
Is that where the moon landing myth came from?
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, the moon landing is a myth, though, of course.
Obviously, no way you could fucking breathe on the moon, man. Armstrong was yanking our chains.
Mhm. Um, and also one thing that I was consistently impressed by throughout the film was the set design. Like, holy shit, the sets are fucking amazing. Like, it really immerses you into the world, and the house, like, is insane. All like the crazy paintings, and I don't know. It's just really impressive that they made that.
I think at the very least for like some of the outdoor courtyard, sets, it like it had to, or at the very least it gives the feel that they had to like have rented out like a historical building or something for like shooting, because it really does look authentic with all of the little nuances that like a
And
words are hard.
speaking of authentic, the whole film was shot with natural lighting. Like all of it, is just natural sunlight or candlelight, and that's it.
Gotta give got to give props to whoever was white balancing this film.
Well, there is a lot of makeup applied to the characters, obviously, but that was also part of establishing the setting because um, if you're just sitting by candlelight and it's just your normal face, you sort of melt into the darkness, but with the right makeup, the candlelight, brings out the features of your face, which is why uh, they have those weird, like, that weird makeup in their faces are like white as a vampire, and there's that excessive blush and all that.
I think I only really like remember that during like the card shark scenes, but there were probably some other more
Yeah,
subtle. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, like, this is basically just the story of some bum who marries a rich woman and then like leeches off of her.
Ain't that the dream? Ain't that the dream? I will say though, the wife is an interesting character because it's like, despite the fact that this dude gives her every reason to divorce his ass, she like stays loyal to him. She catches him like committing adultery with like the chambermaids or something. He does all of that shit to her like firstborn son.
I think towards the end she might have gotten a bit sick of him, but
Yeah. There's
yeah,
never any like verbal or like even like an aside glance from her that suggests that like maybe like a subtle regret, but it but it never like becomes forefront in the narrative in any way.
well, she isn't even given a proper name in the film. Like, she's only referred to as her ladyship or Lady Lyndon, like, because that's all she is in society, and to the main character, just a lady, just, a symbol. She's not really seen as her own person when she is, and sort of because of the, shackles of society and how women are treated in marriage and all that. She's like, she lives a really depressing existence.
Yeah. It wasn't like a mark against the film. It was just like a
Well, no,
observation, you know.
I didn't mean it as a
How
mark
dare
against the
this?
film.
How dare this present things historically?
Yeah, I don't think the headphone warning, but yeah, like, I don't think the film is sexist. Obviously, it's actually making a point against old, like, misogyny.
Yeah, it's
But yeah, at the end of the film, we do see her sign something with her name, and it says H. Lyndon, I believe. So all we know is the first letter of her first name, and that's it. We don't actually learn the full name, but that is a sort of like reminder that yes, she does have her own name, and she is her own person at the end of the day.
yeah. We associate the name Lyndon more with Barry, but that's only because he like married into the family anyway.
And he like took the name after her husband died, and yeah, he cucked him. He cucked a dying man.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot there was like a whole scene where like he actually confronts the dude and like mocks him about the fact that yeah, you're gonna die, and when you do, I'm gonna fuck your wife. I think that's the
He
only
probably
scene.
already was.
Yeah, I think that's the only scene he's in actually, and I completely forgot about it.
Mm. Um, yeah, it's Barry's role as, or as a father is sort of interesting because he has an actual son with his wife, and he treats his son very well. Like he's he's actually a good father for the most part. Like he spends time with him, he plays with him, he like gets him stuff when he's dying at the end. He sits by his side the whole time, and he genuinely feels like love for his son,
Yeah.
even though he's an awful husband. But like, yeah, he's like a very cruel person too at the same time, because he's like awful to his stepson, although his stepson isn't a fan of him from the beginning because he sees him as a common opportunist, which is true. But he doesn't really do anything to mend that. Instead, he just like whips him on the ass, basically.
Yeah. I will say, I do think that his love for his son is genuine, but I also think there is like a possessive quality to it almost, that sort of like the reason he treats his biological son better than his stepson is because this came from my bloodline. This is my legacy. It's not some other guy who I've been saddled with after I cucked him. It's so it's like the love is genuine, but it's also like there's a bit of an ego thing to it.
It's kind of interesting for a film from the 70s to make this point, but it's kind of like like physically punishing your own kids, because like the narration basically says that it's because of Barry's cruelty to his stepson that their relationship further deteriorates, and him like physically punishing him was sort of like the big first event that set their relationship off into that, or in that downward spiral.
Yeah. I've got a lot to say about this movie. Let me tell you, I've got some great commentary to share. Okay.
I mean, honestly, like someone who's like a lot more eloquent than either of us could easily talk about the film for more than a full hour. But yeah,
It is like, I will say this much. When I was younger, I wasn't a big fan of Stanley Kubrick because the first film I saw of his, and it was a film that was recommended to me because a lot of people said that I'd like it, was 2001: A Space Odyssey. And I'm not going to deny, from like a directorial standpoint, that film is very impressive, probably one of the best looking films ever made. But like in terms of like plot or character, I thought it was like completely lacking, to me at least. And outside of like Hal, the computer, there wasn't really anything interesting as a character for me to latch onto. And even then, the character of Hal was just, he doesn't have a character. He's a computer, this unfeeling thing. But this film is like the complete opposite for me. It's all about character. It's all about, people's flaws and vices and their little human nuances and quirks, and how they interact with each other and the structures they build for each other. It's very, I guess it just resonated with me a bit more,
It is definitely an impressively made film. Like only a very talented director could have made it, but like it is a lot more about the story and character.
We're talking about Lyndon, right?
Yeah.
Okay, then. Yeah. Yeah. So, probably not
This
my favorite Kubrick film. That would still probably be A Clockwork Orange, which is ironic because I know he doesn't like the reaction people had to that film, but
mhm. I don't know where I'd rank this right now, but I actually do prefer 2001: A Space Odyssey personally, but I would say this is one of his better films, maybe my third or fourth favorite Kubrick film. That's kind of hard to say. Um, it's a lot more restrained than some of his other later films, like because this came out in between A Clockwork Orange and The Shining, which are a lot more expressive. But this is sort of like this film isn't really sort of out there, I guess, which I mean makes sense because it's about like sort of like high society.
yeah. Again, I think the more subdued tone helps because it's partially about how repressed people are in that setting. You know, they're not allowed to have emotions or like genuine connections, you know. That's why it's so easy for Barry to like use people. It's because
Yeah,
he's not encouraged to have like connections. He's encouraged to have like not like human connection, but like financial connection, like,
yeah,
you know. And that's why one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when he like meets the gambler character. I can't remember his name. He's sort of asked to spy on him, and the two of them share that Irish background, and he spent so long being like a soldier or like working for is like a in that environment that like the moment he sees someone who has like even the smallest modicum of a connection to someone like him, he sort of just he breaks down immediately. He immediately tells them who he is and what he's been sent to do, and I do think that they did form a genuine connection to
yeah.
yeah, you know.
That I mean that scene like could be seen as a bit of emotional weakness from Barry because that was like a really risky thing to do because he could have like not been Irish and uh yeah, he could have been easily been betrayed, but he was lucky that the guy was actually Irish. The guy with the funny name that I forget.
Yeah. Like I said,
Um
probably my favorite scene in the film, and
mm, yeah, there like despite being a sort of farcical story with this huge douche protagonist, there is definitely more emotion to the film than something like 2001: A Space Odyssey. Um, I really like the music in the film. One of the recurring songs is a very classic composition, Saraband, by, I believe the composer's name is Heindel, is how you pronounce it. The one
Heindel.
that goes dun 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 like that.
Yeah, it's God, I can't. I'm sure like if the music was played for me, I'd know it. I'd know what you're talking about, but
And
I'm not.
I just have no
Yeah,
music to my voice.
yeah, you know, we're not musicians here. We're not gonna.
I mean, yeah, I'm kind of an amateur musician, but not really. Um, And the other original songs are very good too.
Do we have anything else we have to say about this film, or?
Yeah, I like how the big final confrontation isn't like a, good versus evil sort of fight, and it's like it's a big honorable duel. Barry's stepson, Lord Bullington, walks up to him and he's like, "I will have satisfaction," and he acts all arrogant and stuff, and he's sort of making a comeback. So you think, oh, maybe he's he looks kind of wimpy, but maybe he's cool now. But obviously, Barry's a loser. But in the actual duel, we also see that Bullington is also kind of still big baby too, because he's vomiting, he's shaking, he's a coward just like Barry. And it's very farcical because Bullington misses the shot, and Barry, in the rare act of compassion, he intentionally misses. But
I think it's debatable whether or not it was compassion. Because that was followed by the death of his son. It could either be he's taking pity on this guy, or he's
Well, it wasn't immediately after the death of his son, I don't think.
Well, I mean, in terms of the film's chronology, but
Well, either way, he didn't he decided he was going to let him walk away, and he didn't want to kill or seriously injure him. But then Bullington basically is nah, dude, I'm still gonna shoot you, even though I nearly pissed myself from that, and even if you are still trying to let me go, no, I'm still gonna shoot you. So he's very petty, basically.
Yeah. And again,
it shows that there really is no honor in that whole system.
Yeah. And again, I really do like the idea that there's might be different motivations, or even all of those motivations at once for sparing him. Is it a rare act of compassion? Is it disgust? I'm not even gonna bother with you? Or is it just a suicidal inclination?
I think the suicidal part could actually be real, but well, actually no. Barry does seem kind of shocked when he points the gun at him again, so no. But yeah. I'm sure I could have more to say about this, but I can't think of anything right now. It's I think it's a very amazing film. It is a classic. And for a while, this was seen as one of Kubrick's more underrated films, because some people thought, oh, it's long and boring, and there's not a lot of action, and the main character isn't as iconic as a Jack Torrance from The Shining or an Alex from A Clockwork Orange. But I think he does have more depth to him than either of those characters. But yeah, well, I do think it is.
Well, Alex is kind of a caricature of a antisocial person. So
yeah. But I would say I don't think it's quite my favorite Kubrick, but it is among his better works. I think it's better than a lot of his early stuff, although he does have some good films from the late 50s and the 60s. I think it's better than Full Metal Jacket and Eyes Wide Shut, but yeah, it's a great film by an amazing director. I would definitely recommend it. This was my first time watching it, and I would give it a 9 out of 10, I think.
Yeah. I'm gonna go the full throttle and say it's definitely a 10 out of 10 film for me.
Yeah, I think after maybe rewatching it, it could definitely bump up to a 10, but yeah.
Yeah. We saw this film, I think, on the Criterion Blu-ray. Was
Yeah,
that?
it's in the Criterion collection, and I have it on Blu-ray, but it's not currently on any streaming services, unfortunately, although you can always rent it off of Amazon for like a few bucks, and um you can buy it digitally on Amazon too, but I feel like a film like this does deserve to be seen in the highest quality, so I would recommend the Criterion Blu-ray if you have the money to burn and are a big, massive fan of Kubrick like myself.
Yeah. You probably should give this movie a watch just once.
Yeah.
Especially if you're into like historical dramas. So Scott, our recommendation, why are you listening to us? Go watch it, and hopefully you'll see why two rambling idiots who can't organize their thoughts like it so much.
Yeah.
All right. So, next up, our next film, I am going to be recommending. I think it was made in 2008, 2019, 2018, 2019. I mean, uh, Green Knight, based off of the Arthurian legend of the same name. I've never seen this film before, but I've heard good things about it, and we'll get back to you on what we thought of it next episode. Goodbye.
Actually, 2021.
2021. I'm so bad at this.
The Green
Anyways,
Knight.
yes.
Watch The Green Knight from 2021, directed by David Lowery. By next time, if you do not want to be spoiled.
Yes. And with that, we'll see you next time.
Farewell.
Goodbye.